Our next speaker, I'll introduce in a moment. There is, Nell's just reminded me, one of the books that we were talking about yesterday regarding behaviour in shelters for vets and veterinary teams. Apparently there is one of those books left, so if you've been hoping to get those, I should have a word with the Get to Zero people. Their site's just there. So our next speaker this morning is Trish McMillan Loehr, who will be talking about litterbox problems. So would you please put your hands together for Trish?
Thank you for giving me more time to talk about poop. Those of you who weren't here yesterday won't get that. So shelter cats. How many of you are on the front lines talking to people in shelters who are relinquishing animals? Anybody in the room? Got a few, yes? How many of you are training people who are on the front lines talking to, okay, cool. You will get some stuff out of this. It's being recorded. You can make them watch the webinar. This was originally an hour-and-a-half presentation, and I have had to compress it to 45 minutes, so I'm going to be focusing on problems with the actual litter box rather than spraying. So the cats who are urine marking, there are different cures, but it's also a harder problem to diagnose over the phone. So if we can just get the frontline folks to know about litter box problems, it will really help. The statistics in the United States, if an adult cat comes into a shelter, there's an 80% chance it is not leaving alive. So if we can, as many of the other speakers have said, if we can keep them in their homes, that is the best. And a lot of the reasons for relinquishing cats are litter box problems. If we can if we can avoid returns, if the cat goes into the home, starts having a problem, we might not have noticed in the shelter. They're pretty good in the shelter. If we can keep that cat from coming back with a known problem, we can save that cat's life. And also the prospects for readopting a cat who comes back with litter box problems, is not an easy sell. So it's important to know that this is a really common problem in cats. It's often medically based. Usually it's temporary, and it can usually be solved, especially litter box avoidance problems are really solvable. You just need to set the cat up for success and do a little detective work. So the first thing, these are the things we're going to go through very briefly. I'm going to have one slide on medical rule-outs. You can take a picture of that. I'm not going to do any more than that. We need to distinguish urine marking from litter box avoidance. And then we'll go through a whole bunch of checklists, what to do with litter box problems, and a few kind of last resorts if you have a person who really wants to keep the cat and needs some extra help. So the detective work to find out if it's medical, find out how often they're missing the litter box. Usually if it's small amounts, really frequently, that points to a medical issue, not a behavior problem. The location of it, sometimes a litter box avoidance can happen because the cat is in pain in the litter box, so they blame the box and try different areas instead. The smell can be different with a cat who is having a urinary tract infection. If there's blood in the urine, get them to the vet. There's no behavior help for a medical problem. And the behavior may look different. They may be making vocalizations, they may be squatting differently. So find out those little clues and see if you can get the cat to the vet rather than return to you. And here's our quick slide on medical rule-outs. I am not a veterinarian, I don't play one on TV, but if you send them to the vet, here are some things that they can check for. The cat on the top has bladder stones. That's for a really common thing in cats. And who recognizes the little guy on the bottom? Why does Giardia have a happy face? It's not very happy. So here's your detective work to figure out if it's urine marking or litter box avoidance. The fellow on the left is clearly marking. He's backing up to a vertical surface, so get your clients or your adopters to check, is the urine sprayed up against something? They'll often quiver their tail when they're marking. Anybody who's lived with a marking cat can see that out of the corner of their eye. The cat on the right has a urinary tract infection and is squatting on the bed. So that's, if the urine is deposited on a horizontal surface, more likely you have a litter box problem or a medical problem. So I've reduced my entire urine marking half of the presentation to one slide. This is the most important thing that you need to know. If somebody calls in, the cat is spraying in the house, I need it to stop, it's coming to the shelter. Send them over to your vet clinic, get the cat desexed. It reduces marking in 90% of males, 95% of females. It's being in season will affect whether they spray or not. The virtual pet behaviorist, which I worked on for a number of years, aspcabehavior.org has free handouts. So write down that website, look up litter box problems, look up urine marking in cats. It's got handouts you can use for your organization. You can put your letterhead on it, just leave the ASPCA logo on it as well. And you can give those to people if they come in and want to return a cat. Just say, take this home, try it. So before we dive into the figuring out litter box problems in cats, I'm going to give you an exercise in empathy. So we all know what to do with the toilet on the left. Australians love to travel. How many of you have seen the toilet on the right? Did you have trouble figuring out how to use the toilet on the right? Well, cats have trouble with weird-looking toilets, too. And it is amazing. I'm in private practice now. It is amazing the things people expect cats to use as toilets. Some people want to train their cat to actually use a toilet. I've seen that backfire terribly. Just stick with the litter box, especially if the cat has a problem. And some of these litter boxes that move and have hoods and do strange things, cats are really pretty wonderful for using the things we ask them to. Here's another exercise in empathy. If you ran into that toilet, I just Googled worst toilets in the world. If you ran into that toilet in another country, no matter how badly you needed to go, would you find a bush? So cats will do that too. They don't like dirty toilets either. So first things first, how often are you scooping the box? So here are some things that litter box avoidance can be. It could be just urinating outside of the box. It could be just defecating outside of the box. It could be both. Some cats prefer one box for urine and one box for feces. So if you've only got one cat, try adding a different box. Some cats prefer one location for urine and one location for feces. So putting the two boxes in different places can help. We've talked about pain-related avoidance. A lot of cats have a substrate preference. They will prefer a certain type of litter. You may not know that if you get a stray cat into your shelter. So we'll talk about how to work with that. Just missing the box is a really important clue. We'll talk about that too. And urinating over the side is another problem. That's not necessarily a litter box problem. It can be related to inter-cat issues, and cats can guard litter boxes from one another. I'm not going to go so much into the inter-cat stuff because that's often the cause for urine marking as well. So here's the detective work Sherlock Holmes cat needs to do. So when your client calls or your adopter calls, find out if they are missing the box with urine or with poop or with both. Find out where they are making their mistakes. That can give you a really good clue, especially if they are urine marking. If it's against a door, there may be another cat on the other side of that door who's doing the same to the other side. Find out how many litter boxes they're using. Find out the type of litter boxes. Find out the type of litter they're using. There's some weird litter out there. There's some strange stuff people expect cats to use as a toilet, and that might be the problem. Check into other animals in the homes. Often if there's recent changes or other stresses, that's often a cause for urine marking. So the biggest clue that the cat does not like the toilet you have given them is if they're just missing the box. They're doing their best, they're getting close to the box, and they're making the mistake right beside the box. That is, there's something about that box that I don't quite like. Find out how many litter boxes they have. How many litter boxes does this person in the picture have? 2 litter boxes side by side. To the cat, that is 1 litter box. If they've got 2 right beside each other in the same little tiny room, to the cat, that's just 1. So maybe putting, if this cat was having accidents behind the couch, maybe putting 1 in a room closer to the couch might resolve that problem. The size of the litter box is often a big problem. The type of litter box, some cats may have a preference for type, and I will give you the type that they generally prefer, but you may need to do a little preference testing with that as well. The cleaning routine is often a problem. If they're going over the side, that could be an older cat who's not able to squat. It could be just the way that cat goes. I have a friend whose cat always goes over the side. She has the box against a wall with a puppy pad taped to the wall beside it. So what's a good litter box location? Is this a good litter box location? This is where I see them all the time. Maybe, maybe not. If the cat is fearful of loud noises, that might not be so great. If they don't want to be confined in a small space, some cats may not love the right beside the toilet location. We do want to have, as Dr. Carson said, we want to have the cat's kitchen away from their bathroom. So I pet sat a cat who had the litter box and the food bowl, the water bowl all touching. Like, this is a very good cat. She is pooping in her kitchen. But as a rule, away from the cat's food and water bowl is better. A quiet place, but a good line of sight, especially if there's other animals. You don't want the cat to be caught around a corner from a rowdy dog. Away from dog areas is good. It's good to have a couple of escape routes. I see them often sort of jammed into a corner. If you've got a cat who's having problems, maybe making sure there's another way out of that box might help. And the boxes with the little hoods and only one way out, that can be claustrophobic for some cats. A lot of folks like to put them beside the dryer and then put the kids' tennis shoes in the dryer and wonder why the cat is not going anywhere near the litter box. So loud appliances, heaters that come on, can be startling to a fearful cat. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen them in a very dark basement where I had an elderly cat as a client who had to go down all these stairs into a very dark basement and just putting a nightlight. They weren't going to move the litter box, but we put a nightlight in and that helped. But it would have been nicer if it could have been on the main floor with him. So with your senior cat considerations, this is the oldest cat in the world. I think she's in her 30s. Rule out medical problems first. Sometimes having lower sides for older cats can be a little bit easier on them, or at least a cutout, especially if you're standing up over the side piers, at least a lower cutout for them to get in. It's really nice to have one on every floor for an older cat. If you make it easier for them to get to the litter box, the problem might go away and you don't have a senior cat coming into your shelter with litter box problems. So if there's certain targets that the cat is going to, the behind the sofa, pooper, or for some reason the little rugs in the bathroom are often a target. The easiest thing, maybe just pick it up after your bath, put it over the side of the bathtub, problem solved. You might need to confine the cat in some way. You might just need to close the bathroom door. If you're not willing to pick up that bath mat, that's where the cat keeps peeing. Just close the door. Another thing that sometimes works is making their bathroom into the kitchen. Maybe start feeding them near that sofa where they're pooping behind it. If you turn it into the kitchen, it might not be such a target. There are some really awesome motion activated devices. I've used the SCAT with 3 S's. It's just a can, you can turn it on, and whatever goes in front of it, it will make a psh, really loud sound. Those can be a good deterrent if you've got a cat who is just going in one spot behind the sofa. If you can just block the access and have them deterred from that area, it might solve it. It might keep that cat in the home. The upside down carpet runner can work. Cats can kind of walk on it if they're light enough. But you know, I don't know if you have them in this country, the carpet runner, yeah, and they turn it over and it's got little pointy things. If it's a sofa or something that they're targeting, making it less comfortable to walk on may help. At the very least, it's waterproof. And of course, any mistakes that they make, get some enzymatic cleaner. Find out what they're cleaning up with and use something that's specifically designed to take the smell away completely, because cats have really good noses. And if they're walking by a spot and go, oh, toilet. Good idea. The behavior may continue. So I just searched litter boxes on Google, and here's what popped up. All these crazy things that people think are an appropriate litter box for cats. Cats are amazing. A lot of them actually use these and don't have problems with the litter boxes, these confining, small, weird-looking, often things that move after they use the litter box, and most cats don't have litter box problems. That's yay for cats. On the other hand, if you're a cat, this is what they generally prefer. Your cheapest litter box hack is a nice tall bin. I'd prefer to have 2 exits if this was a cat with problems, especially if there's more than one cat in the house. But a nice big bin cut out a side, that works really well, and it's also got the high sides for your cats who go over the side. At the very least, having something that's big enough and open if the cat has inter-cat problems or dog problems in the house, having multiple exits over all of the sides may make them feel a little safer. I've seen crazy things used as litter. Some people like the shredded newspaper. There's so many things wrong with this picture, I can't even start. So if I'm talking to a client who has a cat with litter box problems, I say start with what's most likely to work, especially a shelter cat. If you don't know what their preference is, go with unscented litter. I went to the store to get litter for my new cat, and I couldn't believe that there was only one choice without scent in it, and it was not clumping. So unscented clay, something that clumps, at least with adult cats. There's some controversy on using clumping with kittens, but if it's an adult cat clumping litter, they tend to prefer something fine-grained. A lot of people fill it up too high. That's the problem in this one. It doesn't need to be that deep. It needs to be cleaned daily, and especially if they are urinating on the side, the whole box needs to be emptied and washed with an unscented soap every week or 2. I got one word for people who call me with cat litter box problems and they're using liners. I just say, take out the liner. If the cat gets in there and starts scraping and gets a claw caught in that liner, it can freak them out. Some of them just don't like the sound. So although they sell all kinds of liners, if you've got a cat with problems, try just removing it. See any other problems with this picture? I think that was a Halloween dessert. I don't think it was actually cat litter. A word about covers is most cats don't love it. I also don't love covers because it keeps the person from seeing how dirty the litter box is. So if there's an open litter box and you can see that it's dirty, you're more likely to scoop than if it's all covered up. And I think with cats with their very sensitive sense of smell, it's kind of like us being in an outhouse if you get trapped in there. Also, that litter box they can't even see out of. So if the dog comes by or the cat they don't like comes by while they're in there, they're going to be really nervous. So I don't love covered litter boxes as a rule. Occasionally, if that's what they grew up with, that's what they need, fine, but probably take the cover off would help. How many boxes? The rule of thumb is 1 per cat plus 1, especially if you're having litter box issues. A lot of cats, as I say, prefer 1 for urine and 1 for feces. Have 1 on every floor if you have one of those multiple story houses, particularly with an old cat or a fearful cat who's not going to go all the way to the basement, adding a few extra ones. And 4 litter boxes in 1 room is 1 litter box to the cat. Here's a way that you can do preference testing if you've got a cat who's gone into a home and you don't know what their substrate preference is. In this case, it's okay to put them all side by side in your litter box room, but you may find that they are used to a wheat-based litter and they find your clay weird, even though the cat behavior person said most cats prefer clay. So if you're not sure, try some preference testing, buy a few boxes, buy a few bags of litter, give it a shot, see what the cat targets. Substrate preferences are really important. If I've mentioned with kittens, you don't want to use the clumping litter under 4 months. With outside cats who have come in, this can be a real problem. They have no clue that this box with the unscented clay litter is actually a toilet. They may aim for your plants because that's what they're used to. So if your cat comes to you with a definite substrate preference, I've seen them that have just used towels. They're an outside cat. They've had a pile of rags they've been using. What you need to do is start with a substrate they prefer, fill the litter box up with outside dirt, and add a little bit more each day of what you want. So if they prefer towels, I know people who just have rags that they put in the cat's litter box and add a little bit more litter as you go, and that may help them make the transition. If the person calling you has a long-haired cat, and some long-haired cats are known for having litter box issues, I think some of the problem may be the fact that the feces especially will stick a little bit to their paws or under the tail. So just a little trim to the paws and under the tail may help the litter not stick. I think when the poop follows them out of the box, stuck to them, it can be really freaky for cats. So just making sure they're clean, making sure they're trimmed, keep the litter box clean, and medical checks. Some of your long-haired breeds are more prone to medical issues that can cause litter box problems too. So here's what you can do with your shelter cat adopters. Get your volunteers and train them well. Make them watch this talk. Send them to the virtual pet behaviorist, aspcabehavior.org, and you can just send them in their spare time to learn about all kinds of behavior problems. There's free handouts, I think 180 of them on everything you can imagine. Lots of cat issues, not just litter box problems. So even if you don't have an actual behavior person to run the behavior helpline, if they have this site up, they can go through and help people from your front desk. As everybody has said here, keeping the animals in the home is really best for the animals. They're already bonded. So what about our cats who are in the shelter? We have had a few talks about portals. I love portals. The cage setup is really important. As everybody has mentioned, cats don't like to go to the bathroom in their kitchen or eat in their toilet. So even with a smaller cage placement setup than what they would have in a home, having the litter on one side, food, water, bed on the other, can really help keep litter box problems from starting in your shelter. The placement of the litter box, if there's a way for the cat to get up away from it, I've seen all kinds of creative things used in shelters where you, even just putting a box in for the cat to perch on so that they're not right beside it can help them. And of course, double cages are really ideal. In group housing, it can be a little bit tougher. This is our group housing in the New York City shelter. And you can see there are lots and lots of places for the cats to get up and away and avoid one another. It's really important to keep the litter boxes clean. They need to have places to hide, and really watch your group housing for conflict, because cats can guard litter boxes from one another. It is a resource to them. I had a friend whose cat, she only could keep her litter boxes in the basement for some reason, and two cats would sit at the top of the basement stairs and guard the litter box area from the third cat. She had to carry the cat downstairs several times a day. So just realize that it can become a resource, it can be guarded, so have lots of them out there, have lots of places for the cats to get away from each other, and that should reduce missing of the litter boxes. That's a real turnoff to adopters when they go into your group housing area and it's you've got cats missing the box. And of course, keeping things as clean as possible help. So I think cats get a lot more stressed in shelters than dogs do. They are not used to seeing other cats. Many cats have been an apartment cat their whole life. They've never seen another cat except outside of a window maybe. And suddenly they're in a shelter and there's a bank of cages here, there's a bank of cages there. They can see 8 cats who are also stressed and giving off all kinds of scared cat smells. So one of the best things you can do is give them a place to hide. I found when I did the shelter behavior workshop earlier this week, I had a horrible time in this country finding paper bags. I had to go to an office supply store and pay 10 cents for bags that looked like this, that you can just get free or close to free But this is one of the cheapest things you can use for a fearful cat in the shelter, giving them a place to hide, letting them get away from the litter box, letting them de-stress can help prevent all kinds of problems. And they'll actually come out and show you who they are more quickly if they have a place to hide. So if you have a shelter and you have cats and they don't have a place to hide, office, store, 10 cents, you can help them. You can also, one other problem that really comes up in a lot of shelters is the bank of cages here, the bank of cages there, and they can see each other. If you can figure out a clever way to make that not happen, whether it's having fewer cats, whether it's having all the banks of cages facing the same way, I've even seen shower curtains hung in between the banks of cages. Just taking away the visual stimulus can help cats de-stress more quickly in your shelter and have fewer problems when they get out. You can cover the front of the cage of the one cat who's having problems too, if that's not possible. So hiding places, perching places. Office fosters are a really great way to learn more things about cats. We've had some cats who have just made a mess out of their whole cage. They're just really, really, really stressed. We're not sure if it's a litter box problem. We're not sure what's going on. I shared my office in New York with the cat behaviorist, so I would come into my office on a Monday morning and there would be a new cat. I'd be like, what are you here for? But it was really cool to see how different a lot of them were once you got them out of the little cage. Some of the ones that were turning everything over, it was in response to the other cats. And once they're in an office and they're not facing a cat and they have a little more room, you realize this isn't really a problem cat at all. We can just adopt him from the office. So I love office foster for cats. So we'll go into a little bit of the remedial problems. If you've got an adopter who's got a cat that you've run through your list, they've tried everything from the virtual pet behaviors site, I'm going to give you a very last-ditch solution for some cats. It's essentially putting them back in the shelter. In the shelter, they make very few mistakes. They don't have a lot of choice in where to urinate or defecate. So a cat who's had a lot of problems in the home, you've tried everything else, you may need to confine them in a large dog crate. And this crate is set up with the litter at one end, with the food water bed at the other end. It's really important if this is an in-home cat. It's important for shelter cats too, to make sure they still get exercise and enrichment, so take them out, play with the wand toy. But if you're not supervising that cat, confine them where it's harder for them to make a mistake and gradually release them. So once they've had a number of days without making a mistake, maybe they get the bathroom with their crate and the litter box, and gradually give them a little bit more of the house, much like crate training a puppy. And again, doing all of the things that you would do otherwise, cleaning up with enzymatic cleaner, and just taking things slowly. Some cats have been able to be retrained to a litter box who've had really bad problems with this technique. And I am a big believer in better living through chemistry. If you can persuade people to take a stressed cat and find a veterinary behaviorist or a veterinarian who knows something about medicating cats, bringing the stress levels down with a little bit of medication is not a bad thing. And again, the Feel Away is a wonderful product for cats. It's if a cat's having litter box problems, you can use the diffuser, you can use the we've used cotton balls on, just spray it on cotton balls for shelter cats, and that can be helpful. And I'm not sure if you can do this in your country, but alternative placement is wonderful. Are you allowed to have barn cats here? Yeah. Okay, good. There was a lot of opposition when I first got into sheltering to sending cats out to live as barn cats, but if they have a really horrible, horrible litter box problem and you've tried everything and they just cannot seem to get the idea, I've seen them marketed as non-toxic pest control. I think if you ask that cat, would you rather live in a barn, with somebody feeding you and taking care of your veterinary needs, or would you rather be euthanized? This can be a really good last-ditch spot for not just your ferals, but your chronic litter box cats as well. So I'm going to give you a case study. Here is my cat. I adopted her from the local shelter, the Asheville Humane, and I went in specifically looking for an older cat. an outgoing cat, a cat that I could clicker train. Doesn't she look like, did ya? She's very smart. I wasn't counting on one with litter box problems. She came in with a history of house soiling. It said on her cage, litter box problems, see front desk for details. She's over 7 years old, so she was in this home, but I asked to see her intake form. Just, I don't really know if I want to take on a cat with litter box problems. I know how to deal with it, but let me look at the history. And when I looked at the history, it said 6.5 years in the home with 0 litter box problems. And within the last year, there had been a new baby, there had been another cat, and Kindy was the one who was making the mistake. So I don't know if they tried adding a second litter box, if the cat was guarding. She's a pretty outgoing cat, but she does not like other cats very much. So I'm pretty sure there was some inter-cat conflict. So the owners, rather than calling the shelter and getting behavior help, put her outside. And it's North Carolina, and winter arrived, and she's a very, very social cat. I can just picture her with her nose pressed to the window. It was getting colder. We were having some really cold days. Her family was worried about her, so they took her to the shelter, and she'd been sitting there, just sitting there. So when I saw the history, I said, that is not a cat with a litter box problem. That is a cat with a home problem. So I was a little concerned she had never lived with dogs. I was a little concerned bringing her to a home with dogs. So I decided I'm just going to set her up for success. So here's what Kindy got. She got the massive litter box. It is in her own room. I was going to cut a second exit, but it's just none of the dogs can get into the room. It's the guest bedroom. She loves when we have guests. It's see-through, though, so if a dog is approaching, if there's anybody around, she can see through it. It's got an escape route, and it's super huge. It's just a big litter box. I'm using the fanciest clumping litter I could find. It's amazing, Dr. Elsie's. I don't know if you have it here, but it just clumps really, really hard, and I clean it religiously. So the thing I was worried most about with Kindy with the reported litter box problems was if she is urinating due to stress, and she's going into a home with 3 large dogs, and she's never lived with dogs before. I wanted to take it really, really slowly. So she got put in the room, and this is the hardest thing to get adopters to understand, this slow release. Cat comes back the next day. She hates the other cat. She wasn't supposed to meet the other cat today. But I did it by the book. I kept the doors shut to the room so that she could hear the dogs and smell the dogs but not see them. And as she became more confident, you can see the cat-proof baby gate I have. I had to add the extra little thing there because that yellow dog, believe it or not, can squeeze through to eat kitty roca and kitty food. So there's a big, strong gate there, and on the other side, the other entrance to the room goes to the kitchen, and then there's the same type of gate on the kitchen. So she's got her room and the kitchen, and there's a nice tall shelf counter in the kitchen that she can watch the dogs from. So the first little while the doors were closed, I went in, I played with her, I let her de-stress for a few days. When she seemed to be coming out of her shell a little bit, we opened the doors, let her see the dogs through the doors. We brought the dogs in one at a time to meet her at her own speed. She could escape to the kitchen or she could come in, and she actually did really well with the dogs. I was very impressed. The dogs less well with her. One of them. But it took about a month before she was confidently just walking out, biffing the dogs in the nose if they annoyed her, and she pretty much rules the house now. You can see the respect on the pit bull's face. He has a long and unrequited love affair with Kindy. He sings to her. If you catch me with my computer, I'll show you a video. So our last little exercise here, we are going to check our expertise in cat litter box problems. I know it's hard to get Australians to shout things out in a large room, but my shelter peeps will do it. You'll come through for me. So how could we not improve this litter box? Shout them out. What are some of the things that you would? Liner, yeah. Lid, yay, you were shouting. Hey, Australians. Excellent. I'm not sure about the bow. I think that was supposed to be a present to that poor cat, but he looks unimpressed. Very good, very good. All right, what's wrong with this picture? It's way too small. Yeah, can you imagine that nice hardwood floor with that large cat? Yeah, definitely a little bigger. And he looks like one of the cats who's standing up a little more to pee, so having a higher side might also help save that beautiful hardwood floor. Very good. All right, what is wrong with this one? Corner, yeah. Yeah, and you can see it's a multiple cat household. If that cat is unsure, he looks unsure about the other cat approaching. This could be a litter box guarding event happening right there. Anything else you would improve? If there, I see all the paper towels around it. I'm guessing the cats are having problems hitting the box. Yeah, a little bigger would be nice for those guys. And I can't see how many litter boxes are in the house, but there's no escape for that cat. They're trapped in the corner. If there were more litter boxes, even if the ginger cat was guarding the litter box, the other one would have somewhere to go. And it looks to me like there's a problem because there are towels all around the box. These are random pictures from the internet. How about this one? Yeah, that's a little too much litter. You see the litter box, or the litter company commercials, they'll have a litter box filled all the way to the top because they want you to use that much.
Why is that a problem? I mean, I always thought that would be like the why,
Yeah, well, it can be a problem. It's not a problem if it's not a problem. For people, they'll kick the litter over the sides more easily when it's filled right up to the top like that. If your cat tends to stand up to urinate, even if they're just standing up a little bit, having the litter up to the top can make it go over the sides. And if you have an older cat, you know how as we get older, running on the beach is getting a little harder when it gets deeper. If they've got some arthritis, maybe having not so much deep sand to walk through can be a little bit easier for them. And again, the size of the cat to the size of that litter box, that's a really big cat or a really small litter box. Almost everything, when I was looking for litter boxes for Kindy, all of the commercial ones she's not a huge cat, but they're just so tiny. So if you are selling litter boxes at your shelter, have a cat expert come in and take a look at the size of the ones you're selling. You might be able to avoid returns by just sending cats home with appropriate litter and appropriate litter boxes. At Asheville Humane, they only had kitten-sized litter boxes for sale in the gift shop, and I don't know if they were just out of the cat-sized ones or if that's all they had, but I did not buy from them, but a lot of people might have. So here's your resource page. You can get all of your free handouts, and I really like the catinfo.org. The link carried over is litterbox.htm. I think it might be HTML. That's a vet who wrote about the litter box from the cat point of view. It's got some really good pictures of how to make your own litter box out of a tote. And there's all kinds of great resources out there. So I'd love to see you guys support your adopters. Try to keep cats in their homes if they have litter box problems. Some of you may have cats at home with litter box problems. Give some of these ideas a shot. If the cats are urine marking, I'll send you to Virtual Pet Behaviorist for some tips on that, but it may take a little more detective work. I really like to go into the home of cats who are having urine marking problems because I can often tell by the line of sight that do feral cats ever walk along that hedge? It's a little easier to figure out in person, but just plain litter box avoidance, you can offer a lot of support, keep these cats in their homes. And if you want to email me for any of this, there's how to get hold of me. I love that picture. So keep cats in their homes. Yay, cats. Thank you very much. Are we heading over here?
Hello, hello.
We're doing very well. Well, I've got lots of questions, but I'll let you guys go first. So who'd like to ask a question of Jan or Trish? Thank you.
Jan, you said with the TNR permit system that you always got the permission of the land or owner. What happened if they denied their permission?
We couldn't do the program there. So one of the things we wanted to make sure we were very sensitive of is trying to, well, first of all, we were very specific about where we were going to release cats. If we had environmentally sensitive areas, or we had areas where there was high conflict, we wanted to make sure that we were respectful of the community's desires. And so for those, most of the time that was happening in mobile home parks, where we had lots of people living in a very condensed area. And we would try to work with the mobile home park managers and trying to explain to them that TNR would actually improve the situation, because they had huge stray cat problems and a lot of abandonment was going on in the park. So we tried to use education the best we could, but we had one or two situations where they would not allow us to come in and do it. And then unfortunately, that meant that people were doing it undercover. So it was happening anyway, but we couldn't actually manage the situation. And in one situation, we were actually able to turn the park around and get them to allow us to do it. But that mostly happened when we had community mobile home parks.
I actually saw in the Reno area, when I was spending some time with Nevada Humane Society, there was a mobile home park where there was, there was lots and lots of cats. And when they started the program, they were actually finding dead cats in incinerators and bins and so on. And then when they started the program, they did a lot of outreach, and people saw that there was another alternative, that could arrange for the cats to be desexed at no cost, and then they stopped finding the dead cats in the bins and the incinerators.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened in this one situation. We were able to turn it around because actually the manager tried to kill a cat, and we were able to charge him with cruelty to animals, and they were, a new manager came in, and we were able to say, listen, there's a more humane way of handling this problem. And it takes a lot of education, again, that in door-to-door education, because it was some of the people in the trailer park themselves who didn't, they were like, we don't want these cats here. We want them to go away. So really trying to educate the people in the park so they could get behind the movement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but if you weren't able to get the permission, you didn't impound the cats?
Yes. If we couldn't get permission, basically we were trying to get permission to go in and establish a colony. So, the activity was still going on. We just weren't in there trying to manage it. People could still come and bring cats to us and get free sterilization if they wanted it, but we didn't have an active colony situation.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Question for Trish. What depth of litter do you recommend?
Sorry.
Hang on, we've got a conflict with the microphones. Perhaps this one first and then this one. Sorry about that.
I just wondered what the return cats eat and live on, and what do the released cats eat to live on?
What do they eat? So in the TNR program where we have colony managers, they're actually being fed. And one of the most important things in the managed colony is that we try to educate the colony manager about not overfeeding, but having feeding boxes where they're hidden. Wildlife has less access to it, because the other thing that can happen is if somebody is overfeeding these cats, we have wildlife issues coming in, which exacerbates the problem. So with the colony managers, they are feeding cat food. And then with the cats that are returned to field, these are cats that came to us with a good body condition, and we believe that we know these cats are finding food on their own. And so they may be getting food out of a dumpster, they may be being fed by somebody. We did a survey, and about 22% of the households in Pueblo were actually feeding cats, a single cat that they said wasn't theirs, but that they fed on a regular basis. So again, I think Kate Hurley did a study in cats that were being, in our shelter, only 2% of these cats were actually, if they're coming in and staying their stray period and then being reclaimed by their families, only 2% of them were going home. But that when she did a study around cats that just came home on their own, it was 66% of these cats that were missing for a while ended up coming home on their own. So they could be cats that are owned, and the owner gets a free spay-neuter. Unintended, but, and an ear cut too, yeah. And so that's, and we have not had a situation where somebody has called us and said, oh my God, you spay and neutered my cat. Because when we're gonna go into these zip codes, we notify them and we say, hey, this is what's going on. If your cat's outside and not identifiable as an owned cat, your cat could get neutered and ear tipped. So we let them know up front. It's on the postcard when they get mailed, we mail out. When they're going door to door, their flyer is talking about that too. So those cats are, not going to a place where we know there's a specific feeder, but because the cat's coming in good body condition, we believe that those cats have resources, whatever they may be, and they're thriving. And if the cat comes in, the cat's not in good body condition, the cat would be euthanized if we can't place the cat.
Test.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Trish. What depth of litter do you recommend?
I'm not sure what your brands are in this country. My cat is on Dr. Elsie's unscented clumping litter, and I have never met litter that clumps like this. It's just any kind of liquid in it gets really hard. And the other thing I love about Dr. Elsie's is it comes with a little booklet with some really good tips on litter box problems, because probably if somebody's been sent to the store to pay extra for the fancy litter, they may have a problem. So I really like that about the company. Does anybody know if that's available here? Probably not.
Sorry, I was meaning what depth.
Oh, what depth?
Yeah.
Depends a little bit on the cat. Some of the sites recommend 1 to 2 inches for cats with litter box problems. I find when I give my cat, that's 5 centimeters, when I give her too much less than that, it starts sticking to the bottom. But the older cats definitely try just decreasing the litter box depth. It also depends how high the side is. If you've got a low-sided litter box and you've got litter that's almost as deep as the box, not only is it going to get kicked over, but it's going to get, the cat's more likely to go over the side. So the books say 1 to 2 inches. In actual practice, a little, the 5 centimeter, maybe a little bit more for a younger cat, works better for my cat.
Trish, I wanted to ask you if you've come across cat crystals as a litter, crystals? I mean, I know it's quite expensive on a shelter.
I've seen those.
But
there's
does anybody have experience of using those in a... What do you think?
Generally not preferred.
No, because...
That one. Just that if you survey the average cat, they don't like the crystal. So if you've got a proper litter box problem, I'd get rid of crystal.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird, I've seen these beads that come with a flusher that runs water through it, and just, whose cat is using this? It's just so weird. The closer we can get to what they used in the wild is better. So yeah, crystals, I have not recommended those.
Yeah, in the clinic we use crystals that don't absorb urine, so that we can collect the urine from sick cats too.
Yes.
Maybe
So that's
what
why
they're
we
for.
use the crystals.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can buy them pre-packaged inert ones, can't
Yeah.
you? Yeah. Oh, this is a fascinating discussion about litter. Thank you. Hi, David.
Hi, sorry to move away from litter, but Jan, with the licensing of the cat colonies, obviously that made the municipality very comfortable with what you were doing. How did the single community cats or the cats of unknown status, were you colouring outside the lines when you're dealing with those cats in the same way, or did that come under the umbrella of legality?
No, actually, we weren't coloring outside the lines. We made sure that we could do that and inform the local government that we were going to be starting that program when we implemented it. So we checked with the city and county attorney that they were going to be supportive of that program, and it turned out that they were, thank goodness, so that we could do it.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for Trish, again with litter. I'm over here. So mine's in relation to males that are spraying. We have issues with males spraying. Obviously, it's a little bit different to going on a horizontal surface. So what's your process when you've got males spraying? And also, does the FIV status cause problems with male spraying?
Yeah, spraying is a whole different 45 minutes. I could go on for a really long time, but in general, it's a stress problem.
Yeah.
So your treatments will generally involve obviously desex the cat first, reduce the stress level. A lot of times it's in response to cats outside. So covering the windows, using sort of white noise to reduce the sounds of cats outside, using deterrents outside to keep the cats from walking past the window. A lot of cats, it's just a general stress thing, though. If they're stressy cats, it's very often in response to another cat in the household. I am pretty sure if I brought another cat into my household, my cat would develop some problems again, just due to stress, just looking at her behavioral profile. So you've got chemistry, you've got feel away, you've got more play, more enrichment, more stuff for the cat to do, so they're tired, blocking the windows. There's many, 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 many things you can do. And I have no experience with FIV status. I'm not sure if our...
Yeah, perhaps you could just expand on that last part a little bit.
It's just a particular cat. He's an adult male, 6 years, that we desexed at 6 years, and he's FIV positive, and we can't figure it out. He doesn't seem stressed, but obviously we can explore other stuff. But yeah, I was just wondering if, because he's FIV positive, maybe he's always going to be a sprayer.
Yeah, I have no experience with FIV positive being a factor in that. I would maybe throw some anti-anxiety medication at him and see if that works. You could,
perhaps somebody else in the room has got a comment about FIV and spraying in mature cat.
It may just be your cat.
Okay.
Yes, the lady over here. Could excuse me, if you give a, just two ticks because we really can't hear you. Thank you. Thanks.
Sorry. Yeah. Just in regards to that, I've actually had a lot of experience with FIV positive cats. Again, it mostly just reflects back to stress. Cats in the household generally, not big sprayers. Out of all of them, most of them are males that are FIV positive. We haven't had any correlation with them and spraying. It all just goes back to stress and health.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question for Jan. You mentioned in your presentation that part of the program was to stop picking up cats. What did you put in place in terms of complainants calling you and saying, there's a cat, what do I do?
That was a big transition for our community because we had trained them to, that we would come at their beck and call around cats. And so we had to do a lot of education on the phone about why we were not picking up the cats, but we did give people the option to bring them in. But we found that most of the time people were reluctant to do that. And we talked about why we were no longer picking up cats, that the cats were at risk of being euthanized. And as John mentioned before, and when you survey people in the United States, I think it was something like 75% would rather have that cat stay outdoors than have that cat be at risk for euthanasia. So it was quite the education process. So we created scripts for our teams to go over specific talking points with the public when they called. And of course, there were people who were angry and people who called counsel, and then we'd get a phone call. But you have to work through that, and you're never going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be that 25% that's out there being vocal and upset about it. But because we did give them the option of bringing in the cat themselves, we felt that there was, there was an opportunity for them to try to solve their problem.
Okay. Over here?
Yeah, I work in foster, and we've recently had some foster carers contact us regarding kittens that have been using the litter box, and all of a sudden they've started urinating on their beds, the person's bed. What would be the best solution? Would it be containment again?
Yeah, you definitely don't want your foster kittens learning that beds are an appropriate substrate. They'll often decide what they used as a kitten is what they need to use from now on. I have fostered kittens, and they are poop machines, and it's not always nice poop. So I would also suggest multiple litter boxes, and the jury's kind of still out on clumping versus non-clumping. There were some cases years ago where some kittens died, and it was decided that it was the clumping litter that did it. I'd love to see some more data around that, because boy, did I wish for clumping litter when I had my foster kittens this spring. So yeah, I would confine, I would get more litter boxes in there, and I would check on how often they're cleaning them, because every time I walked into that room, I needed to pretty much dump the whole litter box and refill it. So also maybe a little bigger litter boxes than what the shelter's handing out, even if they have to go with a homemade one. They are inexpensive, and there's just a little more space, because I think the kittens definitely didn't love when the litter box was messy and they stepped in poop, and then they were walking out and they're starting to realize that's unpleasant, and if they find the bed's always clean, that may become their preferred substrate. So yeah, a little detective work around it, and at the very least confined so that that doesn't become a habit.
So not letting them sleep on their bed.
If my foster kitten pooped on my bed, I can tell you where they'd be sleeping. Yeah, I would put them somewhere where there's the choice between slippery linoleum or nice litter, as far as where they're going to use the.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Someone over here?
Yep, here. Hi, Jan. So when we talk about TNR programs, the biggest question that we could ask, what's the exit strategy for such programs? So have you trialed any exit strategy along the project? So
actually, in San Francisco, we did. So we had a colony of about 100 cats living in Golden Gate Park that had been abandoned there over the years, and the San Francisco SPCA had a very active trap, neuter, return program, and it was actively managed by volunteers who would go in and feed, and then also trap new cats that may come into the environment. Then that population diminished down to 2 cats, and in the end, we ended up trapping those cats. They were older cats, they were 10 or 11, and we ended up being able to put them into a different environment, because the park at that point said, we want it cat-free, and we're not going to wait for these last 2 cats to pass away. So the exit strategy on that one was to pull the last couple of remaining cats out of that area, and then it was cat-free. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great start, and it's true.
And sorry, over here. Yes, thank you.
Just in respect to the type of litters, at our shelter we use the AusPet dual tray, sieve tray systems, and that works really, really well. So, and we send them out with our foster carers as well. It doesn't help the poops. You still need to, frequently scoop the poop, but it does mean that the urine goes through to the bottom, so it actually will keep the litter dry, which can be quite off-putting for a lot of cats.
Good tip, thank you. And over here?
Hi, I'm Jenny. I've been catching, neutering and releasing the cats around my shelter. I can't go further than that financially, but nevertheless I'm doing it around my shelter. I've got cats and dogs in my shelter. I'm having great problems catching one female. I'm afraid she's probably pregnant again. I've caught all the others. They've been desexed. I keep catching them again. They keep going back for more and more in the traps. But there's this one female that I just cannot get.
There's, of course, one male as well.
Yeah, when we have
At
cats
least.
like that, we use a box trap. Have
yes,
you?
I use a metal catch.
Yeah, but we've had really great luck with that. We go out at night or hiding in the bushes. But it's true, and really use like the stinkiest, nicest food we can absolutely find, and then use the box trap, to pull the stick, and the cat comes down on the cat, and we've had really great luck with that. So you've tried that?
I've tried just about everything, and she knows when to come out. She does come out at night. She just won't go near the trap whatsoever. All the others haven't had a problem with it, and even my house cats. One of them just knows there's food in there, and she goes, eats the food, and sits in there and waits happily till I come and let her out. With this female, I just can't.
Now, sorry, perhaps we could put a microphone just here. It's really not possible to hear you.
And just the other thing, the 2 litter boxes I find really good, and they know themselves which one they want to use for what, and I just know that works really well for me, the 2 litter boxes.
Okay, back to the first part. Thank you.
Yeah, I do TNR. I've done over 500 cats, and I've built my own drop trap. Was using the normal cage trap, and when you get down to that last female, usually that you cannot catch, it's a drop that it goes over the top. It doesn't look like a trap, but you have to be there. It doesn't trip, and you pull the string. And I've worked with so many colonies, and we get that last female every time with the drop trap. So you've got it. But I had mine made. I could not get anyone to make it. They're supposed to be made out of wood. And this one lady insisted that her husband make it for me. And he didn't like wood, so he made it out of metal. And it is a real contraption. I have to put this thing together. But it really works. Now, you can buy them in Australia now, but they're smaller. And I haven't had as much success with the bought one. But the one I had made, it's netting over steel. And it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Oh, maybe you two could catch up in the coffee break and exchange notes on that one.
Could I ask you, Jan, did you supply the traps to the people? Did you supply them how to use them?
Yes, absolutely. So part of the budget that you saw included purchasing, I think we purchased around 75 traps out of the grant, and then we're lending them out, yeah. And we did deposits on them, so we could try to get them back, hopefully. But yes, we did lend traps out.
Okay, yes.
I'm interested in the interpretation of the laws and how you got around the abandonment situation. Because did you get legal advice? Did you have books?
Well, first of all, it wasn't legal when we started. So we actually researched some different laws that had been established in other parts of the United States that had TNR programs that were enacted and working. And we basically modeled ours after some of those TNR laws, and then we had to go through the process of getting that legislation passed, and it's local legislation. And and that took us probably about a year to get that done. But then finally council passed that law, which made it legal to actually have colony cats. And and outline the requirements for that. And we did go to attorneys and get opinions, especially from the local government, because they would be the ones who would be prosecuting any violation. So we wanted to make sure we had them on board with what was going on so that it wouldn't be an issue. And so abandonment, again, in the United States, it's abandoning an animal with a lack of resources, and if we're bringing the animal if the animal's in good body condition and you're bringing the animal right back to the place it came from, that animal has resources. I mean, these animals are living out there, and in Colorado, obviously, we have very cold weather, we have snow, and people say, well, how can you let those cats out when it's cold weather? Well, the cats were out there. The cats are out there, they're living out there, they're surviving, they found a place to live, shelter, they've found food. And so, essentially the only thing we're doing that's changing is that we're desexing them and microchipping them and tipping their ear.
I do wonder if anybody here has had any experience in dealing with local jurisdictions in this area that they'd like to share. It's a closed room. What's said in the room stays in the room. Yes, Russell. Perhaps Russell could have a microphone, please.
I was just going to say, up this end, some councils in Victoria have actually tried to start TNR programs, and Victorian government said, no, you can't do that. So essentially, councils have tried, and government local state government is saying no.
Okay,
So
so
that's where-
that's more of a state legislation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Russell?
was just going to ask, we've been told we can't do it. Has anyone actually just done it and got fined?
Just 1 minute, we'll give you a microphone because it's much better.
Yeah. Does anyone know anyone who's actually been prosecuted for doing trap neuter release? Any martyrs out there that have gone to jail for not killing a cat?
No, New South Wales on the campus have a Cats on Campus program that they've been doing, but it's on private property, so it's a little bit different. I wanted to start one at the University of Queensland, and because we were getting the kittens coming in, and initially they were going to the RSPCA, but they were poorly socialised, so in kitten season, their chance of being rehomed was fairly small. So we started a foster program and then early age desexing them. But it seemed silly to keep taking all these kittens in, and the females were out there. So I wanted to start a TNR program because they're being fed by students in the campuses, and I got told I'd lose my job. But there was a little bit of an opener. They said, if you got it sanctioned as a research project, then that's okay. So I actually am speaking this afternoon, and I'm looking for councils and welfare agencies who'd like to partner with a council to do it as a research project. And it needs to be done well. We're going to have to do wildlife surveys as well and have control postcodes. So it'll be a big project, but it has to have really good science to underpin it. So I think we can get it approved through government agencies if it's a bona fide research project.
Okay, anybody else got any comments on this issue? Thank you. Okay, well, let's just see if there's anyone else who wants to contribute to this discussion.
I also want to just say in the United States, it is illegal in other areas, like LA has passed a law, and I think Betsy and I were talking, it's been 7 or 8 years where they are not allowing TNR, so there's been, the national groups are working together to try to get that to shift. But it sounds like, it's such an incredible environment here, and you have so many endemic species, and protection is really important. So I think earlier John was talking about how do we work together with the wildlife folks who are going to be opposing this is going to be really key to your movement and to get something like this enacted. And I really try to shy away from doing it illegally, because I think that can also hurt our movement if people feel like we're not being responsible. So it's an interesting problem that you have here, and I think I'm so excited to hear that if you can do a research project, you will have some data that you can actually go then to the state government and say, well, here are some facts. Let's not just go off of gut reactions anymore. Yeah, exciting. Well, we haven't published it, but that's an interesting idea. I'm not a scientist, though. Maybe I could talk to you later.
Fantastic. That's really good. I know in Victoria they did a Who's for Cats project a few years ago that was not well marketed. Anyway, okay, someone else had another question down here. Yeah. Have you got a microphone here? Fight over it? Chasing?
Yes, he also had a question. I just wondered how you told the difference between a cat colony manager and a hoarder who was receiving all the neighbourhood cats.
You want to know the difference?
Can you tell by looking?
You can tell by the smell. Yeah, so, and this has been really a very big challenge for us. I don't know why, but they just seem to be coming out of the woodwork these days. So we have, when the cats are inside, the cats go from outside to inside the house, and then the conditions, living conditions, become so horrid for the person and the animals. And at that point, we're having to send animal law enforcement officers out to do an assessment, and then determine, what's going to happen. In those cases, unfortunately, especially if we have at this point, if it's out of control and we've got neighborhood opposition, a lot of times we actually have to trap the cats that have already been part of a TNR colony and euthanize them. I mean, it's really horrible, but we have the neighborhoods just, at that point, they're so anti-cat. it's not easy for us to like move them down the block to somebody else who's willing to take that on, which is what we usually try to do. If we have a situation that's we'll try to move those cats a little bit down the alley in the neighborhood, if the neighborhood is willing to support that. And so one of the things we've been trying to do is we have a coalition of rescues and shelters, and we've been trying to really heighten the education around hoarding within our own groups, because everybody knows, about hoarders here and hoarders there, but they're afraid to come forward. And so talking about, listen, if we can get to them early, we can avoid a lot of this euthanasia and, try to help these folks and get into those homes and spay and neuter the cats inside and make sure that the human and animal conditions are humane.
Do you think there's any danger of turning a cat colony manager, tipping them over the edge into a hoarder?
Oh, I think, isn't hoarding an understood medical condition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist, but yeah, I think that there are people who gravitate, to doing cat colonies, and then it gets out of control. But again, the majority of the people don't do that. It's not a lot. We've had maybe 2 colony managers out of 300 that have had that situation. So again, I think it's really about having that relationship and coordinating and trust, so you can try to keep those situations from happening sooner. And that's been a big lesson for us, because we've had to really reach out to the other cat rescues in the area and say, listen, when this is happening, we really need you to come to us. We need you to trust us to do the right thing and work together to solve it.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that was a really good, healthy discussion. I'm sorry, we really don't have time for any more questions now. We're going to get some morning tea, but I'm sure that these guys will be available in the area. Back here at 10:30. Look forward to seeing you then.